we're going to be addressing the issue of what they term being a nice person. And so, in fact, it is the weaponization of the nice person. The thing is, on the one hand, we have this whole thing of, okay, well, we're trying to become nicer people, and we let everybody have their point of view, which sounds wonderful. The thing is, where does it stop, and how can that be manipulated? And what we're finding right now is that nobody knows where they stand.
There is something sacred. That means a central point of stability in your life. If someone demands that we are nice, and then they demand it in a kind of get under our skin and pushes us into a corner of like, where do I say no, right? Am I allowed to even say no? That because that's not being nice. It's kind of like that now, isn't it? Like if you say, okay, no, thank you, this is enough. I don't want any more from you. I will be happy with this. No, you're a bad person. You're this, you're that. And all these labels and name calling comes and all the cancellation.
Also, if I disagree with you, that's again an issue. If I say, sorry, I don't agree with you, not even sorry, we have to see how I added the sorry part to it. Why am I sorry if I disagree with you? If we say yes, it's easy, but if we say no, we have to add the word, no, I'm good. I don't know if you noticed that, but in the language, we say, yes, it's okay. But if I say no, I have to add on, like a friend of mine came to me and he said, I said, go grab anything from the fridge. And he says, no, thanks, I'm good. I said, I didn't ask you if you were a good or bad person. I just asked you if you wanted something from the fridge. But yet he had to add on and qualify his moral position that I'm not a bad person. So in other words, saying yes is good. Saying bad needs qualification. Sorry, I disagree with you. No, I'm good. This is always because saying no is something that is very much stigmatized in society, that you can't say no. And it is a very dangerous position to take. And in the age of AI, that boundary is going to be pushed so much.
Right.
And people are going to say, we're tired of being yes people. And they may go to the other extreme and say no to everything. And that's where you have this polarity that you have.
Right, and that's the danger, because I think it's already starting to happen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another fascinating discussion that myself and Adam are having. It's been so wonderful to uncover some of the topics to do with where we are right now. We spoke about the weaponization of language. We spoke about how the upcoming age of AI is going to have we're going to expand more on that as well as we go along with communication. The last week we spoke about leaders and how leadership is being twisted and turned, and basically people as well in how they interacting as well. And this week specifically, we're going to be addressing the issue of what they term being a nice person. And so, in fact, it is the weaponization of the nice person, which is what's happening now. And we're going to be exploring that. So first of all, welcome to my very special guest, Adam Widowski.
Yes, thank you so much, Richard. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, so Adam, this week we really want to unpack the issue related to language and to terms, because this thing people do not understand, and I'm so passionate about this because I wrote this book called Move, which is all about uncovering the labels that we attach to certain things. Why is something this and why is something that, and why is the sky blue, and why is the leader the boss, and why is a worker a slave, and why is a woman is this, and why is a woman is that, and why a female is this, and it's all being changed around. And the thing is, on the one hand, we have this whole thing of, okay, well, we're trying to become nicer people, and we let everybody have their point of view, which sounds wonderful. But the thing is, where does it stop, and how can that be manipulated? And what we're finding right now is that nobody knows where they stand. Nobody knows where they are. They don't really know who they are. And that's a vital topic. And I believe the only way we're going to be able to get some grasp on what's going on here is to research in the past of people that have uncovered these types of issues to do with language. And just before we got on the call, Adam and I were talking about Friedrich Nietzsche. We're going to speak a little about Nietzsche. And Adam, I'd like you to for your views on how the nice person, we're all trying to be nice people. And so someone would say to you, what's wrong with being a nice person? We're all just trying to get along.
Right. And obviously that is true. Like, we don't want to be nasty people. What's the point? It's counterproductive, and it's just not a, it's not healthy. We should seek to be nice, and we should I believe, we have most fun when we collaborate and have fun and create together. But then I think the problem with our culture from the Nietzschean perspective, as I've been living through it, kind of thinking about it a lot, throughout the years, like, we've lost these fundamental values which set boundaries for us. So, like, if there is something sacred, that means a central point of stability in your life. Let's say, someone really doesn't want to eat meat, and that's a sacred thing. They don't push that boundary. They always, whatever it is, like, whatever the situation, unless they're probably dying of starvation, they will not eat meat. That's a sacred quality. It doesn't have to be related to a religion of any kind, but just something that is very special, of absolute value. Yeah. And I think, basically, when you look at the postmodern critique and all those kind of 20th century philosophers, thinkers, like deconstructionist philosophies, we have, we got rid of these sacred ideas, and we replaced them with instrumental ideas, like science, reason, means to ends kind of thinking. So, and in that way, we managed to make a lot of aspects of our life easier and more functional and profitable and prosperous, and it's amazing world we're living in many respects. But then what we seem to have lost the sight of is that without this core, without this sacred element, we don't have the boundary where we say, stop, I don't go anywhere any further than this. And then I think when the idea of being a nice person comes in, it's very easy to weaponize it on people who don't think they have any values, because most of people don't think they have any values, because the common mainstream, it seems to me, mainstream idea is mainstream consciousness is like postmodern consciousness, that all values are relative, like you say. Anyone can do whatever they like, because we should be sovereign and we should be able to do whatever we like. We should be feeling free, etc. But then at the same time, if there are no intrinsic values, that means values that are not merely instrumental, that are not merely means to ends, but they are ends in themselves for us, then a person who is manipulative, or a state, or an entity, corporate entity, or whatever it is, can always push us, because we don't know where the boundary is. So if someone demands that we are nice, and then they demand it in a kind of get under our skin, and we kind of, it pushes us into a corner of like, where do I say no, right? When am I allowed to even say no? That because that's not being nice. It's kind of like that now, isn't it? Like, if you say, okay, no, thank you, this is enough, I don't want any more from you, I will be happy with this. No, you're a bad person, you're this, you're that, and all these labels and name calling comes, and all the cancellation.
Also, if I disagree with you, that's again an issue. If I say, sorry, I don't agree with you, not even sorry, we have to see how I added the sorry part to it. Why am I sorry if I disagree with you? I don't need to be sorry. It is my opinion. But then again, and if you look at the entire American culture, I was talking about this on another call, that if we say yes, it's easy. But if we say no, we have to add the word, no, I'm good. I don't know if you noticed that, but in the language, we say, yes, it's okay. But if I say no, I have to add on, like a friend of mine came to me and I said, go grab anything from the fridge. And he says, no, thanks, I'm good. I said, I didn't ask you if you were a good or bad person. I just asked you if you wanted something from the fridge. But yet he had to add on and qualify his moral position that I'm not a bad person. So in other words, saying yes is good. Saying bad needs qualification. Sorry, I disagree with you. No, I'm good. This is always, because saying no is something that is very much stigmatized in society, that you can't say no. And it is a very dangerous position to take. And just to add on what you're saying, which is a very, very important comment that you made there about about us, our ability to function in the world has to be able to be. We want to integrate. We want to be nice people. We want to work with everybody. But where do you draw the line? And so if we are these people that are free to do whatever we want, does that mean we do anything? And that's where do we draw the line? So if we say, for instance, some of these things that have been in society regarded as terrible, like sleeping with an underage person, or robbing an older person, or robbing anyone. Where do we draw the line, and where do we push the boundaries? So the limits to no become very small, and we're being enticed all the time to keep on saying yes. But at some point, I believe, and this is where we were talking about in the last episode, in the age of AI, that boundary is going to be pushed so much, and people are going to say, we're tired of being yes people. And they may go to the other extreme and say no to everything. And that's where you have this polarity that can happen.
Right, and that's the danger, because I think it's already starting to happen. You saw it with like Republican politicians in the US when the wind has changed after the COVID narrative, and they were like, some of them were really vengeful, like, I was cancelled on Twitter, and now I will show you, and this is precisely the backlash, where the resentment within us, when we feel wrong, because we simply, well, in this case, it was, COVID is one thing, but let's just say in the office, in interpersonal relationships, when we are conditioned, when we are trained to always say yes, because our culture kind of frowns on having boundaries, healthy boundaries, then you end up with people, giving in to illegitimate authority very often, like, because it's just someone happens to be a manager or something, like supervisor, and maybe those not, they don't have to be qualified, they may be exploitative or whatever, but then, that employee who allows to have their boundaries breached because they never got the instruments, especially through, social media, and like, I agree with you, with AI and virtual environments, they everything is boundless there, everything is boundaryless, because it's all click, 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 and you watch a video of a cat, in the middle of the night. So it's that kind of, it trains our brains to be very unbounded. And then when we feel that our boundaries, well, we don't know what our boundaries are, but at some point, I think people feel that they are being, they find out they're being exploited, perhaps, they're being fooled, and then they become resentful. And the resentment is the destructive energy, which then fires back when the opportunity comes, and that creates just a mirror image of the same thing. So the abused become the abusers, and that multiplies exacerbates the toxicity within the team.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That it's so perfectly said as one of the side effects of us becoming yes people all the time, because at some point you feel like your power is being invalidated, and then you rage, and you turn the opposite way. And you find this a lot in marriages as well, even with children, employees, and then you see all these crazy shootings all over the place where the person just had enough and they go onto a rampage. And these are part of the side effects of what we're experiencing here. And you see this in people like Jordan Peterson, all these sort of, you could call them right wing, like, no bullshit, this is the way it is, this is how it is. The problem is these people can be very dangerous as well, because they're making some outrageous statements. And once we become very much fever pitch, and we support them like football fans and take on a fanatical approach. And that's the other extreme. So as the more you say yes, the more the no's are going to appear. And the problem is when the yeses are not balanced, the no's are not balanced. And so I read this powerful statement that the power of your yes depends on the power of your no. If you say yes lightly, then your no is going to be lightly as well. You are wishy-washy. So you see this in relationships, right? Are you with me? Yes. But are you with me? They still ask that. Are you with me? But if you are a person, when you say no, it's no. When you say yes, and so for me, I make it a habit, my yeses come very slowly and very carefully and very calculated because I keep that word, and that's one of my priorities in me. When I say yes, it's yes. And when I say no, I do not compromise. And that's a personal vision and a personal approach that I take. In the same way with the things that I allow myself to do and I don't. And that's very important to have an ingrown understanding of your limits and your perceptions as well. So you find people, even in societies and cultures, they say, would you like to do this? Yes. Are you sure? Why do you need to say, are you sure, if that person's word was golden? Because when you talk to a certain type of person and he says no, you don't say, but why? You know, because you see that. And that's someone who knows themselves very well, and they keep the limits within themselves, and you see it in them. The problem is all of society, and then you see people getting very hurt. But I thought you said yes. Yeah, but I didn't mean it. Or that was yesterday. You know?
Exactly.
Right. Or in
Yeah, I mean,
in marriages as well, right? People get married and they're like, are you going to be with me for the rest of my life? Definitely. And then tomorrow he sleeps with the neighbor. What happened? Well, that was yesterday. So where is the strength of your yes? And then the same thing comes in the corporate culture as well. When the boss says to you, you're going to get your raise, and then the boss says, oh, sorry, we didn't hit our profit targets. I mean, you expect people to sit there and just accept that? Because they gave you their word. They said, we will work for you unconditionally. We'll get our salary. We'll do our part. If you don't keep that part, but then you see, you can't point your finger at the boss if you're not keeping yourself accountable. Right.
You see, so again, like you said, your yes is as valid as you know, and that has as much value. And the same comes to your freedom. Has to be responsible. Like as much freedom as you demand, that you must have the equal measure of sense of responsibility. But obviously, even the very idea of responsibility has been really downgraded and discounted through again explaining it away through, because it's again like free will and responsibility came again from religious traditions, you know, and then from the mechanistic kind of physicalist scientific point of view, like in physics, everything is consequentialist. It's all, I mean, the physics that I believe is the old paradigm that we cannot sustain anymore. Obviously, you know, this is the quantum paradigm is yet to emerge, but there's no way of like implementing it into the industrial machine, I suppose. But the point I'm trying to say is that this thinking of the physical understanding of the world, the mechanistic understanding of the world, that there's a action, reaction, and, you know,
Cartesian
and yeah, Newtonian, you know, logic, then got kind of when I was tutoring philosophy in London, you know, the curriculum, and this is the poshest curriculum, like the pre-Oxbridge type of, still fosters this the theme, the narrative that, I mean, the thinkers, seems to be the household view in Anglophone. I may be wrong, but in this particular, you know, context I was working with in, that was certainly the curriculum kind of was tailored to that concept that is determinism. Our actions are all deterministic, so there is no such thing as free will, and it's difficult to argue with that because there's no way of proving it wrong, because everything, you know, looking at the laws of thermodynamics, you know, whatever the energy comes in has to come out, and it's like none of our actions are truly free. But then at the same time you can say, you know, we have a variety of, we don't have absolute freedom, but we still have a choice of which options we can choose from what we have available, right?
But to expand on that for a second, you see the physics view that we currently have, and when we talk about deterministic reality where cause and effect precede each other, or effect precedes the cause, this is all based on a very limited understanding of the world, because you are putting yourself in the point of observer. So by you measuring something, you have given it a finite measurement, and from that comes a finite conclusion. However, if you are not observing that particle, that whatever that, we'll call it the atom, the way it behaves, as we've seen with quantum physics, now showing us the co-location and multiple locations and instantaneous change across the distances. Again, it's still within this worldview of me here, Cartesian in many ways, looking at the world out there, and it's called bifurcation, which is this concept of separation. But if so, it's something that I find fascinating to explore in another conversation, because physics is a great love of mine, but not the conventional physics, but the theory of reality and of life as well. So you being the observer in this whole thing, and it was one of the most profound quantum physicists of our time, John Wheeler. He said, out of all my findings as a physicist, there's only one thing I can say with certainty, is that one of the things I can say with certainty is that we live in a participatory universe, which means that you are participating as the observer in that particular act. And that goes, so if you say, I wonder what the outcome will be, you just now created a possible outcome. So that's another conversation that I'd love to explore with you, because it would be fantastic. And then we can bring in Heidegger and bring some of the Buddhist philosophy as well. And it's so beautiful, and it's just all fits in so nicely in a non-linear format. But coming back to the conversation, if I may, I'm not sure if you finished with your
Sure,
topic.
absolutely. I lost the track of what was I talking about? What was I starting?
So let's go back to language, the nice person, and this whole thing about language being used if we don't know it. You see, because if I say to you, language is being weaponized, people will say, oh, this guy's a conspiracy theorist. He doesn't know what he is talking about. Fine, leave that aside. Look at your personal relationships between your spouse, between your family, between your boss, between your society, and watch the gap as to how uneasy you are in communicating. And if you don't call that a weapon, then I don't know what is. Because if it's not a weapon, then I would say and speak as freely as I was talking to my brother, as I was talking to a stranger. Yet I can't be this open with people. And you find people who are enlightened people, children, for instance. My 6-year-old will say straight in my face, Dad, I think you're a little fat. You know, and I'll just burst out laughing because it's funny, because it's a child saying it.
It's a child saying it, yeah.
Yeah, but an adult says that, and my teenage daughter says to me, but are you saying that fat people are in some way inferior? Where did they come from? Right? So now we become tiptoeing on everything that we say. And of course, there is this. So what is our framework?
Walking on eggshells.
Walking on eggshells. So do we need a framework? Because sure, in every traditional society, culture, religion, there's certain things that you don't say, and there's certain things that you do say. But where do you draw the line, and which form of identity do you then develop? And can, if you can, at some point bring in Nietzsche as well, I'd be very interested to know.
Right. The main problem we have as the first global society is that we have everything mixed up right now, and we don't know what the basis of identity should be yet. But we know that all the old ones are not, well, they need updating because of the very reason that we are so intermixed, and we are used to living with people of various, various ethnicities and walks of life and whatnot. But then when the crisis comes and we get squeezed again, we go back to our most fundamental values, and that's where I think some of the crisis, the psychological crisis, is that people are actually triggered. That the most painful aspects of them are kind of coming out, and all the traumatized bits, and then they project, don't they? So I think very important from what you said is the place where you don't feel comfortable being honest, because everything is so polarized, the culture is so sensitive that it's difficult. But if you don't, I mean, some people, I think I cannot. I just have to speak. Like I must. I might not have, take up a position somewhere or whatever, but I have to be able to speak freely because otherwise I just get suicidal. So, but for some people, no. Some people just detach, I think, or they
No,
never.
but hold on, just to add on to this.
Right?
What makes you be able to speak your mind? And if you don't speak your truth, just the
Yes.
same as me,
Yes, I
something
think.
happens to it. But why do people choose not to be their authentic selves?
Well, I think I was thinking about this week actually. I think because it also takes a lot of time and mindfulness about language itself, to think about what language is and how it works, and to gain confidence in the use of language is no cheap art. Like it's like it's a quite sophisticated faculty that we have, language. And I think, for example, there's a distinction between being honest and being sincere, right? You can be honest and be nasty. You can be brutally honest, yeah, but with a bad intention behind your words. But if you're sincere, you can't be nasty. You have to be honest with a good intention. So these sort of, we are not really used to thinking about these subtle distinctions within language, because we're bombarded by marketing slogans and political slogans and celebrities, and it's kind of like you said, that's so much information. Like, when do we even get the time to actually stop and take a piece of information and decompose it and ponder on what it means to ask what is the meaning of the word? When you do it, you gain confidence in language itself, and not only that, but you learn that to use language well is our human superpower, and not just to use it well, but to use it well so that you can reach out across the divides and speak to all sorts of people and try to find that place in every person that they care about, so that you can kind of connect, and without language, or without having confidence in your language, it's very hard. So I understand people who like spend decades getting specialized in something that's very important and that gave them a career, but they never really paid attention to language, and suddenly there's this unprecedented cultural situation where, unless you really know how to speak, you are at the risk of being cancelled or at the risk of being called names,
Well, I want to take that further and rewind a little bit. First of all, the question that I posed is that why do people find it so hard to speak their truth? And you said that language is something that's not easy to grasp. So I'm going to disagree with you slightly, although your points are very valid when it comes to language. For me, or I shouldn't say disagree, I should say add on to, for me, why people can't express their truth is because there's fear attached to consequences of them speaking their mind. When it comes to language, language is probably the most fundamental, most simply processed and understood mechanism that we as humans have. The use of language in our context for figuring out who we are is primarily the issue. Who am I? What is going on here? And what am I trying to achieve? And the same way you ask those questions about what you're reading, is that ability in what you're saying about the definition of language, is the ability to be aware and cognizant of what's being said, why it's being said, and so it's the man and the woman knowing their place in this domain. And if you don't know that, then you're going to be sidewashed. And you use these wonderful examples that you said as well. But fundamentally, a child speaks language. He says, "Dad, you're fat." There is no complication to that matter. There's no structure involved in that. So language itself is not a problem. It's that if you now speak the language and then you tell the child, "Son, that's not a good idea. You can't say things like that because you're going to offend them." And then the child says, "Sorry, I shouldn't do that." That's the framework. But then as the child is growing up into a society that doesn't have a common framework, then, and I don't think it has to do with the fact that we're now more culturally diverse. If you look at back in, the earlier 20th century, there was a diversification of cultures, and there was free mixing between very, very many cultures in some way. But just to pause there and say, Adam is in Malta and it's 35 degrees, so that's not a cool design on his shirt.
Yeah,
It's his
I
second
just
shirt.
cycle. I
Adam,
rush
we're gonna,
cycle to the meeting. Yeah.
so we're going to excuse you for that.
I feel
For
not
that.
excited. Yeah.
It actually looks cool. I actually like the way it looks. It looks like
Yes.
it's very manly. So I don't know if is that allowed? Can we say is that manly? But tell me about Nietzsche now.
What do you mean, Nietzsche? In terms of
In terms of the nice person, in terms of morality.
All right.
What is morality? What is it?
Okay, so for Nietzsche, basically, that Peterson has done a really nice job explaining this. Actually, like if you go on YouTube and find this lectures,
Yeah, I've seen them. It's
and
excellent.
he's great. And basically, so the idea of false morality or slave morality said like there's a human trait, like what I described before, that when we are entrained to be these people pleasers, right? We give in to illegitimate, to abuse. Basically, we get abused, but then by not exercising our power, our boundaries of what is important for us, then we get abused and then we get resentful. But what we like to tell ourselves is not that we are weak and we had no boundaries. Instead, we say, oh, we are a nice person because I'm a nice person. So it gives us that moral superiority. We are nice people. We're not like you who says no. Look, you put us all at risk because you dare to say no, because you happen to think for yourself. And we have been abused into not thinking for ourselves. And then that becomes this fake virtue, this weakness concealed as morality. Because for Nietzsche, we can only be moral if we can be bad and get away with it and yet not do it, right? So you
explain that more, because Jordan Peterson really explained that. We can be, say that again about morality.
We can only be moral. We only have a chance to become moral entities if we have also the chance to be immoral and not be scared of the consequences, right? So that has to be an element of like, that's where the idea of power comes in Nietzsche's philosophy, that if you feel powerful enough to get away with wrongdoing, and yet you choose not to do it and do the right thing, only then you can be moral.
Funny, that's Jordan Peterson's one of his videos, so powerfully. He uses different language, but that's where he got it from. I didn't know. You quoted exactly what Nietzsche was saying that, but he was saying that precisely the same thing Jordan Peterson was saying, that is that you can kick the crap out of a guy, but you choose not to.
Right.
In an example, because he said, in order for you to be brave, you have to be strong.
Right. Otherwise, you're just stupid, right? You don't want to be.
Or you're weak, and you're hiding behind that weakness. And you just hit a very important point, Adam. Very, very powerful point here. When we feel weak, we don't want to acknowledge that, and then we cloud that into I'm a nice person, and that's not. And I was thinking about this term narcissism. It's become prevalent. You find this the society that says we're all nice people, and there's all these narcissists out there. So
Right.
anyone that goes against from the status quo, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist. And for me, you don't realize that you're partaking in the same discourse because you're going around branding people. So you're saying I'm good and they're bad.
You are still within the mind game of the narcissistic entity somewhere up there that needs you to hate someone so that there is no unity, right? So people are used and played against one another like this for centuries, for millennia. This religion, this ideology, this politics, this brand, whatever it is, this influencer is like.
Well, it happened with the whole COVID thing, right? Like you were non-vaxxed and you're irresponsible and
Right.
and you can't even mention anything about that because you get censored. So we'll just fast forward past that. The validity of the virus and all the rest of it, I'm not disputing, but the way the political maneuvers and the control over the people was, if you couldn't see that, then again, precisely the point. If you choose not to understand language, as you mentioned, the vitality and the importance of understanding what's being done to you and what you're doing is vitally important, so that you don't apply the same rules and games, manipulative games, to people that you love or to team workers that you love, because it's very easy. And Machiavelli, as we know, spoke. Machiavelli's first name is what is his first name?
Nicola.
Nicola, yes, I think it was Nicola Machiavelli. Explains this. The entire, basically, corporate politics is built around Machiavellian politics and how to the prince. Basically, if you read that book as well, I'm sure you have read it. But that's the vital point, that you can appear in the dark and say, no, I'm not interested in conspiracy theories and language and all the rest of it. I'm just going to be a nice person. You're in the trap.
You're exactly where the real narcissist wants you to be.
Right.
You are there in your little ignorant, self-deceptive pit, ready to be exploited and destroy someone who could be your collaborator, who you could help. You could help each other, but you choose out of fear, out of cowardice, you choose to put your head in the sand.
But tell me, how does that destroy you individually when you partake in society in that form?
How does it what? Destroy?
The individual
right.
who chooses not to participate.
The very well, how I see it, the main problem is that the legitimacy of society, I mean the grouping of people, there's little sociality there, I think, comparatively, but the whole illusion of society, let's call it, hangs on this idea of self-deception being the norm, right? You have to be self-deceived in order to do well in the system.
That's brilliant. Yeah,
right?
that's brilliant.
So unless you try to think for yourself, you are the enemy of the state, the enemy of the corporation, the enemy of the big brother, the enemy of whatever the authority happens to be. So it's rational. Paradoxically, it is rational to be self-deceitful, because that means you survive within the group, within the tribe, and we have evolved to survive within the tribe. So, like you said, and this goes back to your point, which I agree with, despite my remarks about language, that people are scared to say anything, even if it's simple language that can articulate it. People are scared because that threatens their tribal identity and their like security, as we have mentioned already, about anything that they care about. It's associated with conforming with this in-group, with this worldview or narrative or whatever the ideology is at the time. So the like physical survival is dependent on disavowing, betraying a soul, as it were, right?
This is so powerful, Adam. Please, I'm going to pause you there for a second, because what you said about self-deceit being the only way we can cope in this world. There's this wonderful line from, I'm not sure who it was, but someone, I think it was Huxley, but he said, the trouble with fiction is that it makes too much sense, whereas reality never makes much sense.
Exactly, and it's tough to understand. It is hard work, right? So
So when you choose to not participate and say, well, I'll just remain as I am, you see, you hit another very important point. Our biology, and we're psychologically and tribally conditioned to not want to break free of the tribe. Our greatest fear from a psychological perspective, out of all fears, if you take it up the ladder, fear of, we talk about a fear of divorce, fear of being, in a relationship not going well, fear of somebody on social media insulting us, fear of our bosses or our colleagues telling us something. These are all societal conditioned fear. At the top of the pyramid is the fear of rejection. We are programmed to fear rejection. So if for someone on the social media says, you're an idiot, your post is terrible, we perceive that as the ultimate of our fears, which is the fear of rejection. But now, if you want to be free, you have to realize this societal bond that you give your allegiance to and choose not to discover yourself because you prefer the delusion of yourself. What does it do for you? How does it protect you? Because in the old days, that made sense. Your tribe, your village, you had the commander in case you were in trouble. You shut your mouth, they take care of you. But you are giving your allegiance to this society and to this culture that does nothing for you in return. Yet you're afraid of speaking out against it. So if you question what it is that I'm actually afraid of and what the consequences of me taking this action will be, you can become free. Do you relate to that?
Right, absolutely. It's because it's instinctive, it shuts down our reasoning capacity, right? It's the survival kind of impulse that makes us kind of terminate our thinking. Oh no, that's what the conspiracy theory kind of realm is there, so I can't go there because that's what people get canceled for. So I need to be here in a safe space. But the problem where we are now is that this security is not sustainable anymore because the system itself is self-terminating. So what people win through conformity in a dysfunctional, disintegrating society, essentially. That's also why having integrity in a disintegrating in a society, in a process of disintegration, is obviously it's dissonant with it. So it's so hard to stay with it, right? You win in this situation where you have to disavow yourself for the sake of the collective, but the collective itself is running a self-terminating dynamic because it produces more and more toxicity because of the lack of authenticity and kind of authentic energy within it. You win a short-time gain at the cost of long-term loss.
Now, when you say it's a disintegrating society and the toxicity is growing, and it's so almost like could you expand on that more?
Well, I think there's a shift as well. In fact, I think it's both more toxic and both more toxic and awakening on the other side. A lot of people, I guess, with these technologies, sharing, having enough, people who have lost enough have it's not worth it. We've had this a couple of years ago, exodus in America from low level jobs, and I think there's a lot of people actually getting there, getting a grip and actually trying to sort themselves out. There's a lot of the self-transformation culture and all of that. It's real. I mean, there's a lot of people who have had enough. But then also there is these most powerful structures, these molochs of largest entities. They are just the skeleton is toxic. The skeleton is set up for you to disavow your soul within it. So I think it's like I think Daniel Schmachtenberger very well explained it in terms of analogy to a cancer cell. If you have an idea of a state or a corporation that has to have infinite growth written in the business model on a finite planet, when there are planetary boundaries in this case, and we have transgressed several of those by now, and we continue, and then those companies cannot help but grow because the competition grows. So you can't stop growing, right? You have to grow, but then the more you grow, the more you accelerate the destruction of the whole.
That's a brilliant analogy to the destruction of society in that way. The more we compromise, because everybody else is compromising, the quicker we're bringing the inevitable end to relationships and communication as a whole.
Absolutely. Destruction of the very capacity to relate, because everything becomes fake, everything becomes performative. So you don't know whether you can trust each other. So you then end up isolated, and then you set up for having an AI girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And AI whatever it is. So, and then it works.
If we don't get to that point in AI, we get to what you mentioned in the first podcast episode about the World Economic Forum talking about depression being the next pandemic, because you will, and depression is one of the biggest causes. I think the number one cause of depression is loneliness. So when you tie in loneliness, because you just say, well, in that case, I'll just shut up and sit in my Facebook and on my apartment, and you see this culture all over the world where people are nomads. They just got their little laptop and they got their briefcase and they're living in an apartment here and they're living in an apartment there, and eventually they're becoming more and more lonely because they don't even know how to relate to their families, to their societies. It's all disintegrating in many ways. And again, I'm not sounding like the doomsayer, because on the other side you see exactly what you said, people going, whoa, we need to take a pause here, we need to revitalize our relationships. What are we saying to each other, listening to each other? And there's a huge demand for that rising up as well. But like you said, the large dominant players in the space, especially in the media space, that is then linked into the economies, and then the war machine and the big pharma have an agenda. And just because everybody is doing it, we do it, and that becomes. And the only time that you decide not to do it anymore is when your life collapses.
When you already had enough. So you have to be low enough. You have to be desperate to actually extract yourself from it. But if you still have enough teeth in a game, in the old game, then you don't have enough incentive. But while having all of the incentives made by the cartel, right?
This is Huxley's novel, right?
Right, exactly.
You give people just enough comfort and just enough so that they don't feel overwhelmed, and you keep on giving them the soma.
Yes, absolutely. And look what's happened. Even like I'm watching, like I used to be, how things have shifted. Like I used to, play in bands, in metal bands, like hardcore, kind of brutal underground metal, death metal. When I was between my 16 and 30 maybe years old. And that was like a counterculture. That was like, it wasn't supposed to be accepted by society. It was really kind of rebellious and unacceptable, brutal and war and everything. But now I see, like, I just saw that advert, like Visa card, be a metalhead, connect with metalheads. Now being a metalhead is a cool thing because devil sells so well, right? Devil sells so well these days that even now you have these metalheads just being just another product in this machine, which they were supposed to oppose.
So in the past, it used to be like, we're all godly people, and here are these evil people, doing Satan-y things. And now people are saying Satan-y things are the good things. The problem is, the only reason we do anything bad is because it feels so good. And the problem is, if there's nothing that used to be, that is considered bad, what does a person do to feel good? It's one of these weird mind benders that people find very hard to perceive, that we do the things that are societally unacceptable because they feel good in us. And that would take us to Freud, but we won't go into that game yet.
So yeah, we anesthetize with pleasure, right? Like, because there's no transcendental idea of good or bad, because there's no ground for it, for these criteria. This is the reality we're in. We can't pretend we still, can exhume those values from traditional religions. It's not going to work. If we need some sort of sacred, no, that's for sure. We need some sort of sacred dimension to life, but we can't, return to those values which were replaced by this techno-scientific understanding. So,
well, in the one way, yes. As a majority, yes. But you'll find a huge uptake in traditional religions as well, and people going back to it because at least it was recognizable. And some of it may be good, and some of it may be bad. But for me, I'd rather have that than have nothing.
Right? Yeah. Like going back to Nietzsche, I think what Nietzsche because Nietzsche obviously is famous for attacking Christianity or dogmatic Christianity, right? The dogma, the priesthood, all of the manipulation behind the scenes and propaganda of it. But then how my lecturer Ken Geames said it, what he did hate Christianity, but he hated even more a comfortable hypocrite of modern society who doesn't even care about the sacred. That's even worse.
Amazing.
That's even worse than a hypocrite who at least has some sort of sacred.
Yeah. Well, that's very powerful, Adam.
Yeah, I don't know what else I was gonna say. I've lost it. You can't.
We can leave it here then.
Sure.
So Adam, that was one of the most riveting podcasts to me. I was very excited about your perceptions of your input as well, and it's really turning out to be a lot of fun, and I think we will make a huge difference to people's lives in their perceptions and understandings to ultimately lead to a better understanding of oneself and the strengthening of bonds and increasing of communication and authentic communication, and like you said, not just about honesty but about sincerity, and I think the vision that we both share together is for the upliftment of humanity to avoid our pitfalls, because as much as we think by us not knowing what's going on, we're nice people, you're actually going to end up becoming in the slaughterhouse of someone or something that's going to sabotage you because of your ignorance, So
or even a couple.
What?
Or even a couple in the slaughterhouse as a tool of that narcissism.
Well, this is where it all comes down to, Adam. It's in our relationships, it's with our families, and in our workplaces. It's chaos ensuing, and so we have to have these discussions. We have to unpack language, and we have to know where we stand and what our values are and what principles that we want to abide by as a collective, starting small with our tribe, with our families, and then with our communities, so that we're not going back to, okay, let's all become, extreme, religious, which I have no issue with, but let's agree on certain frameworks. And it's very much ingrained in our DNA to be good to each other, to be kind to each other, to be compassionate, to be honest and say, you should have just told me that. I would rather you tell me that and it hurt me than you hiding from me because you're afraid of what I would say or what my boss would say. Because ultimately, men and women want honesty and they want compassion and they want kindness. The problem is these terms have been hijacked, and so everything that is compassion and kindness, including saying no, is become ostracized. You become cancelled for saying no, and that is not a healthy. Yes.
Yeah, by the people who lack the strength of actually working on understanding what it means, or even spending some time on wondering what their core values are and what is right and wrong for them and what are they ready to sacrifice for. Like those are the questions we should all ask ourselves. Like
the point is that the reason they don't ask themselves is because they didn't know the importance of asking these questions. And I think what was uncovered here today was the value even integrating a lot of things that have come out in this particular podcast. It's one to definitely replay and listen to again, because there were some amazing nuggets from you, Adam, and you helped me to elaborate very passionately on certain things as well. And I love our dialogues and our discussions. They're so enriching. And you come in with one aspect and I come in with another, and it really provides a wonderful platform for practicality backed by logic and rational and understanding. So it's not just simply blabbing on as some other people are just doing and insisting this is how you should do it. We're giving you an opportunity to evaluate and to think and ask these questions at the same time. So Adam, thank you so much once again, and thank you for finding time in the middle of the heat wave over there, and I can't wait to chat to you again.
Thank you so much. Excellent, thanks.